Hey everyone, I'm Dan from JazzComposersPresent.com, an online space where composers, musicians, and listeners come together to celebrate the music we love. I'm joined today by Paul Reed, pianist, saxophonist, leader of the Paul Reed Orchestra, and retired director of jazz studies from University of Toronto and Humber College. Paul's here to show us applications of consonance and dissonance.
Hi everyone, and I'm going to talk about something pretty basic today. We all use consonance and dissonance in our own ways. We use it subjectively. We may even use it consciously or a lot consciously along the way. But I thought I'd have a basic look at it and maybe a second look at this basic chart that we're going to show you of what I call the consonance and dissonance gradient. It says spectrum here, but I've recently liked the word gradient. And you can see perfect consonances with the perfect unison on the left, and then at the end of the second line, you'll see a minor second. I've added the minor ninth or augmented octave, so it stays as a simple interval, simply because I feel it has even more dissonance than the minor second. And so what good is this? I mean, this is not a method. This is just something that you use much in the way you use your knowledge of modes. So we have Lydian and Locrian at the other end, and we move from bright to dark. Well, in this case, consonants over to sharp dissonances is just the same kind of path, and how you use the modes, mix them, how you use the intervals and mix them, stack them, all of that can be can really inform your music. And I suggest you give it a try. If it works for you, great. So this came from a book where I first saw it was in a book written by Vincent Persichetti in 1961. And he talks first in the book about intervals, and he presents that gradient. And then he adds a very important statement, which is here. Successful projection, he says, will depend on the contextual and formal conditions that prevail, upon the skill and the soul of the composer. Always those last two. And we need to develop both, obviously. And in developing skill, that's knowledge as well. You know, the more we know, the more we can use in our craft. Okay, so sounds a little highfalutin, but I've always thought that was a good opening to any book. Actually, the first statement in the book is, any tone can move to any other tone. Any group of tones can move to any group of tones, and so on. He basically blows all theoretical rules out the window, and in beginning to explain 20th century harmony. Anyway, let's get to the nub of the matter. I'm going to be discussing, as I said, a couple of examples of music that I wrote in the past where my awareness of this gradient from dissonance to consonance or consonance to dissonance played a part. And in a couple of cases, I think that it's going to be pretty obvious. They're both tonal, and the first one is maybe the easiest one to see without too much effort. And this is a composition called Prayer, contained on the Paul Reed Orchestra. The album is Arc-en-Ciel. It came out on Addo Recordings. I wrote this for a memorial concert for the great and late Eddie Sawson, and a concert that was going to be performing works in his memory by the Ron Collier Jazz Orchestra. And Ron asked if I would write this, and here we go. Maybe have a look at it, and I can tell you a little bit. First of all, those first three measures are piano alone. And I was attempting, I thought my first idea was spell his name. So we have E, D, E flat, but E, D, D, G, E flat. I would have been a B flat, which would have been ho hum. So I changed it. That was enough just to make the attempt to spell his name. And that also introduced some of the ideas that would appear in the main melody, which starts at A. Because the lower brass, it was trombones, tenor trombones, and a couple of flugels also joined in and did a stagger breathing performance of a B flat, just held it through there. It actually becomes three-part writing, as you can hear. So the simple intervals take on even more character. And while I was writing, I had to take into account that the B flat would be there and adding to the degrees of consonance or degrees of dissonance. Let's move on to another example. And this is a very different, although it's tonal, it's a very different approach. It's called Marmalade Margaret. First of all, credit to John McCaslin and his group on an album called Sonalta that was done a number of years ago. They did just a great job on my composition, and my thanks to him and the band. The musical effort here was to take a familiar or older style of music and then using the consonance dissonance gradient to give it an update, if you like, to bring it into the more recent harmonic practices of our day. It's in F. It's in F minor. It reminds you of soul bop, soul hard bop, and or at least that's what it was intended to do. And the bass line starts off like it's going to continue, but right away it leaves the it leaves that and starts to come in and support the harmonies that are going on in the horns. Yeah, so you can see the bass line, and then the horns enter at A. If you just key in on the piano part, which is the fourth stave up from the bottom, you can see the bass line and the piano part and basically see what's going on in the horns. So on that first chord, instead of it being a straight ahead F minor, I used tension notes, the E and the B natural, which don't belong to F minor, and then let them resolve on the C. I didn't stay on the F because that would have been too predictable. And we wind up with what sounds like a minor sixth chord, or a flat six. And but again, you don't see any chord symbols. I wasn't writing that way, and it was much more linear. On the next page, it gets even stranger. And if you look at the bass line, it's no longer following that original plan at all. It's sort of supporting what's going on up in the horns and the piano. And on the next page, there is some more shenanigans involving the same. Anyway, maybe let's hear Marmalade Margaret, and you'll hear this marriage of the old, the hearkening back to hard bop, but with some harmonic detours. This piece, the new and old that I mentioned before, mixing the two things and using consonance and dissonance, that can be used in any style, in any genre at any time, and that's the beauty of it. It gets you away maybe from some of the things that we do habitually. I was inspired also by Dave Douglas's Soul on Soul CD that came out years ago, was a tribute to Mary Lou Williams, and there was it's a great record and does the same sort of thing with specifically a composition he called Blue Heaven. So I recommend that you check that out, and it's a delightful blend of the new and old. So I hope all of this has been some help. It would delight me if you found it useful and that you used it to write something terrific.
Thanks for watching today's mini lesson. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Drop any questions, comments, or suggestions for future videos down below. To watch our full-length events and participate in live Q&As with our presenting artists, head to jazzcomposerspresent.com. Thanks, and we'll see you next time.